The Battle of Bamber Bridge was a standoff of racial violence against an African American World War II soldier unit by the white US military police. It occurred in the English village of Bamber Bridge, near Preston, on June 24th to 25th, 1943. Although white and black American soldiers fought in World War II, they were still segregated, and thus black soldiers still endured racism during their service as a result of Jim Crow laws. It was only 5 years later that President Harry S. Truman passed an executive order to end segregation in the US military. Black American soldiers stationed in Britain found greater acceptance from the British, and many were surprised at their warm welcome at local pubs where they could socialize openly. This angered white American counterparts who tried to impose their prejudices on the British. Laws of segregation in the UK would only come into force post-Windrush, so before this, anything like the Jim Crow laws would have been unheard of at this time. There were only about 10,000 black Britons, and during World War II, African American soldiers consisted of the vast majority of black people in Britain. Historian David Olusoga said that British people were extraordinarily welcoming to their black visitors and were welcome more than white GIs. In the letters and diaries of Britons, white GIs were portrayed as arrogant and unruly, while their black counterparts were portrayed as self-disciplined and charming. Olusoga quoted one British woman in Wiltshire who said, "Everybody here adores the Negro troops. All the girls go to their dances, but nobody likes the white Americans. They swagger about us as if they were the only people fighting this war. They all get so drunk and look so untidy, while the Negroes are very polite, much smarter, and everybody's pets." An often quoted phrase at the time was, "I don't mind the Yanks, but I don't care much for the white fellows they brought with them." In a US military survey conducted in November 1943, African Americans were more likely to have a favorable opinion of English people than European Americans. The African American unit was called 1511th Quartermaster Truck Regiment, and they were stationed at Adam Hall in Bamber Bridge, which was an airfield that housed them. As part of the 8th Army Air Force, they played a significant role in delivering war materiel to various air bases across Lancashire. The black soldiers would often visit the local pub, Ye Old Inn, where they established amicable relationships with the English locals. However, the 234th US Military Police Company was unhappy about this and tried to establish a colour bar in the village. In response, the locals hung signs that read "Black Troops Only" outside the village's 3 pubs. The locals of Bamber Bridge socially resisted against racial discrimination. What caused the racist violence on that night was when 2 military police, MP for short, Privates Windsor and Ridgway, attempted to arrest African-American soldier Private Nunn after he was caught ordering beer after last orders on June 24, 1943. They accused him of being out with a pass and wearing the incorrect uniform. This escalated into an argument where locals and British servicewomen sided with Nunn and the 1511th Unit against the MPs. American soldiers were expected to wear uniform in public, but Eugene Nunn was wearing his field jacket. As Windsor was seeing that things were getting out of control, he shouted "Let's go" and went outside with Ridgway. British locals, British soldiers and African American soldiers were angry at the 2 MPs, with one British soldier confronting them asking, "Why do you want to arrest them? They're not bothering anybody." Black Private Lynn Adams was about to hit Windsor with a bottle on his hand, which made Windsor draw his gun at him. However, Staff Sergeant Bird, who was black, convinced Windsor to put the gun away. Windsor and Ridgway got inside the Jeep, saying "We'll be back," as they started to drive away. Adams then threw his beer bottle at the Jeep and broke the windscreen. Nothing happened afterwards that specific moment. The white privates consulted 2 more MPs and came back in the same Jeep in the direction towards the pub. Around 10:25 p.m, they saw a group of 12 black soldiers, including Nunn and Adams, heading back to their military base. The MPs got out of the Jeep and tried to arrest the GIs, but when they resisted, fighting broke out. The unarmed GIs fought with bottles and cobblestones, taken from someone's garden, while the MPs were armed. One of the MPs fired his gun, shooting Private Adams in the neck. Another black GI was shot in the back. The MPs went to gather more reinforcements, while the black soldiers carried the wounded back to the camp. They passed 2 American soldiers, and when they asked to take the 2 men to hospital, the officers refused and drove off. When the black soldiers got back to their camp, they went to carry the injured to hospital in jeeps. Many soldiers of this camp heard about the incident, which sparked lots of anger. Around 200 soldiers gathered in the yard, deciding what to do next. 2 senior white officers who were guarding the gates that night ordered the soldiers to go back to their barracks. Some soldiers mobilized and seized guns and trucks driving into town. Lieutenant Jones, the 1511th Regiment's only black officer, managed to pacify them temporarily. However, when a dozen MPs in jeeps and an armored car with a machine gun arrived in the area, the black soldiers seized a majority of the guns stored in their base and set up defensive positions. The armed battle erupted, and Private Crossland of the regiment was killed, as well as several other GIs. Some MPs were also injured. 2 trials were conducted, with blame quickly falling on black soldiers. In the first trial, 4 black soldiers were found guilty of various offences, which led to honourable discharges and sentences to hard labour. In the second trial, 28 out of 35 defendants were found guilty on charges ranging from ignoring orders to rioting and seizing firearms. Attitudes among whites in the army were negative against black soldiers. General Henry J. Miller, one of the commanders of the regiment, submitted a report which blamed racial equality in Britain for worsening white-black tensions, combined with what he called an extremely low level of intelligence of black troops. A white soldier stated, "If it keeps on going as it is, we will have a nice Negro lynching down here and things will be better." Another white soldier wrote, "Actually, what is taking place in our army today is nothing more disgraceful than what Hitler is doing to minorities in Germany. I joined the American army to fight against the persecution of minorities. I resent that our army actually practices the same type of persecution." However, Miller's superior, Air Force Commander General Eaker, said that white people were to blame for 90% of the troubles the black troops had, and the American war effort made them feel excluded. Eaker took action by creating a combat support wing, which was under the command of Colonel George Grubb. Grubb's job was to get rid of the most racist white officers and recruited those he trusted to treat black officers fairly. He improved the conditions of the black troops' bases and took great effort to explain to his troops why their work mattered to the larger effort. He instructed company commanders to schedule time each day to learn about the personal background of his soldiers, giving at least 15 minutes to each and showing interest in and sympathy for their problems. Within a few months, his efforts showed results. Performance and morale of the black unit steeply improved, and misconduct reports fell drastically. This piece of history became more known after Professor Rice and Clinton Smith, the chairman of the Preston Black History Group, hosted a synopsion about the Battle of Bamber Bridge in 2013 at the University of Central Lancashire, as they marked the battle's 70th anniversary. This was after Smith found out about the event after visiting Bamber Bridge. During his time as a maintenance worker, he used to visit the village, but he knew nothing about the incident for a long time. But one day he was walking with a colleague and a local resident. He noticed the wooden casing of the door of a bank on a high street was filled with holes. He joked, "I see you've got big termites here." His colleague replies, "They're not termites, they're bullet holes from the war." This is when the colleague told him the history. The symposium was a success, and the battle became somewhat better known. What is really ironic is that the Americans were fighting against a dictator and his allies for persecuting minorities in Germany, but at the same time were persecuting minorities from their own country during the same war effort. Although this is not Black British history, it is a piece of Black history that happened in the United Kingdom that is not widely known. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed it.